It was a typical morning, quiet and uneventful, until Michelle, my stepsister, stormed into the kitchen with her usual complaints. "You're so slow. How can you be so bad at everything?" she said, her voice dripping with frustration. I tried to ignore her, as I always did, but the truth was, it was getting harder and harder to brush off her cruel words. She found something wrong in everything I did, from the way I cooked breakfast to how I cleaned the house. It was like she was looking for reasons to criticize me, and I was her favorite target. My name is Amanda Smith, and I'm 29 years old. I work from home as a contract employee for a company that barely pays enough, but it's work, and I'm grateful for it. I live with my dad, who's been everything to me since my mom passed away. It's been just the two of us for as long as I can remember, and we've always made it work. Life wasn't perfect, but we were happy, until my dad remarried. That's when things started to change. When Barbara, my dad's new wife, moved in, she brought her daughter Michelle with her. Barbara was a kind and thoughtful woman, and I liked her right away. But Michelle was different. She was cold, arrogant, and manipulative from the start. At first, I thought she was just struggling to adjust to the new living situation, but it didn't take long for me to realize that her behavior wasn't going to change. In fact, it was only going to get worse. The more I tried to stay out of Michelle's way, the more she seemed to go out of her way to make my life difficult. She'd leave her dirty dishes everywhere, expecting me to clean up after her, or she'd blast music from her room when she knew I was working, just to annoy me. But the worst part wasn't the little things she did to disrupt my life. It was the way she talked to me, the way she made me feel like I was worthless, like I didn't belong in my own home. "You're a high school graduate, and that's it," she would say, her voice sharp with disdain. "People like you don't go anywhere in life. You'll be stuck here forever, doing nothing." Her words cut deep, but I tried not to let them show. I didn't want her to know how much she was getting to me. I told myself that if I just kept my head down and worked hard, things would get better. But the more I ignored her, the more relentless she became. One morning, Michelle's rage reached a new level. I was hanging up the laundry when she came rushing into the room, her face red with anger. "Where's my skirt?" she demanded, her voice trembling with fury. I tried to explain that I was about to wash it, but she wouldn't listen. "I told you I needed it today," she shouted. "You're so useless. You can't even manage simple tasks." I felt my heart race as I stood there, stunned by her words. It wasn't just about the skirt. It was about everything. No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for Michelle. She always found a way to twist things and make me feel like a failure. And the worst part? I believed her. I started to think maybe she was right. Maybe I was useless. That day, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep letting Michelle walk all over me. I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I was stuck. If I confronted her, things would only get worse. If I stayed quiet, I'd continue to suffer in silence. Either way, I felt trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. Weeks went by, and Michelle's behavior only got worse. She started bringing friends over, and they'd laugh and joke about me while I was in the other room. "Can you imagine living with someone like her?" Michelle would say, her voice loud enough for me to hear. "It's embarrassing. She can't even get a real job." I'd sit there listening to every word, trying to hold back tears. I couldn't take much more of this. Then, one day, I made a decision. I was going to move out. I didn't have much money saved up, and I didn't know where I'd go, but I couldn't stay in that house any longer. Living under the same roof as Michelle was destroying me, and if I didn't leave soon, I feared I'd lose myself completely. I packed my things and found a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. Life after moving out was better, at least, at first. Without Michelle constantly belittling me, I could finally focus on my work. I started taking on more projects and slowly built up a reputation as a reliable contract worker. Things were looking up, but even though I had physically removed myself from the toxic environment, Michelle still found ways to get under my skin. A few months after I moved out, I received an invitation in the mail. It was for Michelle's wedding. She was getting married to a man from her company, someone high up with wealth and connections. I stared at the invitation, my stomach turning. Why would she invite me? After everything she had done, why would she want me at her wedding? I didn't want to go, but I knew my dad and Barbara would expect me to be there. I couldn't say no, even if it meant facing Michelle again. The wedding was set to take place overseas, in France. I booked my flight, packed my bags, and tried to push my anxiety aside. But the night before I was supposed to leave, my phone rang. It was Michelle. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Are you in Paris yet?" she asked, her tone smug. "No, I'm leaving tomorrow," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Michelle laughed. "You really are stupid, aren't you? There's no wedding in Paris. I made it all up. Did you really think I wanted you there?" I felt my heart drop. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You're so easy to fool," she said, her voice cold. "But don't worry, I'll send you the real invitation later. Just remember, if you don't show up, I'll ruin something important to you." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in shock. I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Michelle had tricked me, again. But this time, it wasn't just a cruel joke. She had threatened me, and I knew she meant it. If I didn't do what she wanted, she'd follow through on her threat, and I couldn't risk that I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her, to stand up for myself once and for all. But another part of me was terrified. Michelle had always been manipulative, and I knew she wouldn't hesitate to hurt me, or worse, hurt the people I cared about. I felt trapped, just like I had when I lived with her. For days, I agonized over what to do. Should I give in to her demands, or should I take a stand? The fear of what Michelle might do weighed heavily on me, but so did the realization that I couldn't keep living in fear. I had spent too many years letting her control my life, and it was time to take that control back. Finally, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Michelle win. I wasn't going to let her threats dictate my life anymore. I called the wedding venue to inform them that I wouldn't be attending, and then I blocked Michelle's number. I wasn't going to be part of her games anymore. With that decision made, I threw myself into my work. I had been working on a major translation project for months, a posthumous novel by a famous scientist that had been discovered after his death. It was an incredible opportunity, and I was determined to make the most of it. The more I focused on the project, the less I thought about Michelle, and the more I realized how much better my life was without her toxic presence. The weeks flew by, and before I knew it, the day of Michelle's wedding arrived. While she was walking down the aisle, I was being interviewed on national television about the novel I had translated. The book had become an instant hit, and my work was being praised everywhere. It was surreal, watching my name appear in headlines and hearing people talk about my success. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud of myself. But Michelle's wedding wasn't going as smoothly as she had planned. Word of my success had reached the reception, and soon enough, guests were whispering about me. Michelle's new husband, Steven, was approached by one of his friends, who mentioned seeing me on TV. "Did you know your wife's sister is a famous translator?" he asked, and Steven, taken aback, said nothing. As more people started talking about me, Michelle grew furious. This was supposed to be her day, but once again, she felt overshadowed by me. She hadn't expected me to succeed, and now it was all anyone could talk about. By the end of the night, Michelle's perfect wedding had turned into a disaster. Her in-laws were furious that they hadn't known about my success. And Stephen's father, a powerful man, wasn't pleased. "Why didn't you tell us about your sister-in-law?" he demanded. Michelle tried to explain, but it was too late. The damage was done. Back in the US, I was completely unaware of the chaos I had caused at the wedding. I was too busy celebrating my success and planning my next move. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from Michelle's control. Free from her cruelty. I had taken back my life, and it felt incredible. Michelle tried to reach out to me several times after the wedding, but I ignored her calls. I had nothing to say to her. I had moved on, and I wasn't going to let her drag me back into the toxic dynamic we once had. Months passed, and I heard through the family that Michelle's marriage wasn't going well. Stephen's family had started to distance themselves from her, and her career was struggling. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I had built a life for myself, one that was full of possibilities and free from the shadows of my past. As I walked through my neighborhood one crisp autumn morning, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The sky was clear, the air was cool, and for the first time in years, I felt truly happy. Michelle no longer had any power over me. I had reclaimed my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. Life had taught me many lessons, but the most important one was this. I deserved to be happy, and I had the power to make that happen. With that thought in mind, I smiled to myself and kept walking, ready to face whatever came next.